Good afternoon and welcome to the 5,281st meeting of the Rotary Club of Tulsa. We are so glad you're here, and you, Mike Wise, are going to be glad that you came today. Mike is my friend. His wife plays clarinet in the orchestra at Asbury, where I play saxophone. And Mike decided to come out and make sure I was being monitored properly. Before we start today, I wanted to show you this. One of our Rotarians had a grandfather who ran in the 1904 Olympics. This is a gold medal from that Olympics. This is a silver medal from that Olympics. Among us are Olympians. Holy cow. We've got a great program for you today. Before we get our kicks, on Route 66, we'll begin with the invocation. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do, invocation and pledge, led by Darren Walkup, followed by guest introductions from Alan Whalen, and I think Darren's going to join us again for new member introductions.
All right, you get a double whammy of me today, so please join me in the invocation. It is good to recognize how different we are, our talents, our dreams, our backgrounds, our occupations. And it is good to know that when we were created, each of us were different and broke the mold. No one is exactly alike. Even our thumbprint and our voice tell us how unique we are. Yet we thank you that we can take these differences and mobilize them for the good of Rotary and our community. In our differences, we can think the same thoughts and move together toward a common goal. Bless us as we meet together. Thank you for our individuality and also for our common bond. Amen. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I think I'm doing the, okay. All right, I get the honor to do a new member introduction. Today it's Johan. I'm going to talk slow because we got another one coming up. Welcome back, Johan. Johann Salmon was born in Germany, attending Babson College in New England before earning his MBA from the University of Tulsa. His career journey took him from Boston to New York, where he gained valuable experience in the financial sector before relocating to Tulsa in 2004. In Tulsa, Johan spent 8 years with a local investment firm. He recently transitioned into a founder role at a San Francisco-based technology company. Johan and his wife, who works at the George Kaiser Family Foundation, have 4 children together. He loves volunteering at the Tulsa Day Center and has been particularly dedicated to supporting the Tulsa Public Schools. He currently serves on the board of Tulsa Schools of Arts and Sciences and has previously contributed his time and expertise to Booker T. Washington Foundation for Excellence and the Edison School Foundation. He has been actively involved in the Tulsa community, particularly through his service with Rotary from 2018 to 2022. During this time, he became a Paul Harris Fellow and served on the Rotary Board in 2021 as Secretary and Treasurer. Johan, welcome back. You're up next. All right. Please welcome Jenny Graham. Jenny has more than 30 years. Jenny has lived in Tulsa as a working writer and editor in daily journalism, magazine writing, and nonfiction books. At the Tulsa World, she was a reporter, editor, and columnist who became the first woman to lead the editorial department and opinion section. In addition, she has written pieces for other media, including the Sooner magazine for the University of Oklahoma and the history book for the Tulsa County Medical Society. She has been a ghostwriter for several individual biographies. Jenny spent her childhood in Grove and graduated high school in Perry. She earned her bachelor's degree in journalism and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Oklahoma. Go Sooners. Her past community involvement includes serving on the boards of Amplify, Meals on Wheels, and the OU Student Media. She volunteers with the Poetic Justice Prison Newspaper Project and the Edison Preparatory School Foundation. She continues writing columns and features about the Tulsa community. Jenny is now a part of the Rotary, and thanks to her persistence of our president, she is now a member. Please welcome Jenny.
Good afternoon. We have a number of guests today. Once I say your name, would you please stand and remain standing until the end, and we'll hold our applause until that point. We have Harold Boggs from the Akdar Shrine, and he is going to do a side mic announcement here shortly. Kevin Murray has his wife Annette Murray. District Governor John Raines has his wife Kathy Raines. Joe Moran has his wife, Darcy Moran. Do you notice a pattern here? Richard Holmes has his wife, Lina Holmes. James Adair has Jason Adair. Carl Vincent, our president, has Mike Wise. Jerry Dillon has KJ Jackson. He is a prospective member. And I have our Rotary Youth Exchange student, Willem Overmars, from the Netherlands. Welcome, and we're pleased that you're here.
Did you guys see that Greg Keck is in the house? Greg, did you bring us any free samples today? No? Okay, well, District Governor John Raines, good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here today. We got some really good DNA for you today. Tina's done a fantastic job with this. We're going to go back to the 1920s. Before he was known as in America as the father of Route 66, he was known in Tulsa Rotary as simply our Cy. Long before the highways, before the national recognition, before Route 66 became an American icon, Cyrus Avery was already leading our community in so many ways. Headlines from our club's Tulsa Gasser speak volumes on how deeply Cy Avery was admired. One article was titled Our Cy, and it declared, "We have had a great deal to say from time to time in praise of the wonderful work that Cy Avery is doing. Most of us don't know the half of it, but if you fellows had been fortunate enough to have been out at Ed Adams' club the other night at the Hotel Mayo, you would have come away more sold on Cy than ever." Another one of the Gasser headlines proclaimed, "Cy is always worth hearing." It continued, "A good steward has no trouble in accounting for their stewardship." We have said before in these columns that Cy Avery stands out as one of the biggest men in the state in public life and service. Club archives tell us that one of Tulsa Rotary's earliest and most successful projects was selling bonds to support the World War I efforts in Europe, and Cy was the driving force. Our club was club number 48 at that time when he was doing this. During World War I, he headed the Tulsa County Liberty Loan Campaign. He mobilized Tulsa Rotary to serve as the feet and legs of the drive. Cy personally led the fundraising for everything outside the city limits, which were much smaller than the city limits are today, while oil man and friend of Mr. Avery's, E.W. Sinclair, directed the efforts within the city. They had a goal. They wanted to raise $850,000 $150,000, no small feat before and during World War I. In her book, The Father of Route 66, The Story of Cy Avery, author Susan Kelly recounts the launch of the campaign. To kick off the drive, Avery hosted 90 fellow Rotarians at his farm for a chicken and possum dinner. The menu featured far more chicken than possum, and there was no shortage of sipping whiskey. The evening concluded with a traditional Southern coon hunt, the kind where guests sit around a campfire telling stories while the dogs are turned loose, and later the hunters go to where they hear the dogs baying and go to that tree to complete the pursuit. Their efforts proved remarkably successful. The Tulsa Tribune later reported that size portion of war bond sales alone, organized with Rotary's help, topped $742,000. It was an extraordinary testament both to his leadership and Rotary's early civic impact. A decade later, Cy would once again place Tulsa at the center of national progress. As America debated a federal highway system in the 20s, Cy had already made up his mind. He recognized the transformative power of paved roads. He was an oil man. He was a real estate investor. He was a Tulsa County commissioner. He championed road improvements across Oklahoma and beyond. I believe, based on what I could find, he was one of the earliest street commissioners for the town of Tulsa and was instrumental in the first systematically paved roads in our county. His work led to his appointment ultimately as a state highway commissioner and then to the board that would help create the federal highway system. He was a skilled strategist. He built alliances across state lines and lobbied tirelessly to ensure the new highway, Route 60, later changed to 66, would pass through Tulsa. In 1927, his vision became a reality. U.S. Highway 66 was designated as one of the original United States federal highways. Soon after, Cy founded the U.S. Highway 66 Association, promoting tourism and paving the road from Chicago all the way to Santa Monica. Through it all, he remained an engaged and beloved Rotarian. The Tulsa Gasser followed his work closely. One issue proudly stated, "We in the Tulsa Club know Cy, love him dearly, and wish the community had 100 more men as good as he." This was a remarkable individual that was a member of our club. Another headline read, "Cy, Road Builder." It observed that while others might get stuck in the mud, a literal problem in the days before paved roads, Cy was determined to show the entire United States how to get out of it. He was elected to the executive committee of the American Association of State Highway Officials. Didn't even know there was an association like that, Jerry, did you? And he was chosen from representatives of 48 states. As the Gasser proudly noted, Cy stood pretty well outside his own mud hole. And yet, for all of his national accomplishments, he still found time to host Rotary. On September 29th of 1928, Cy invited the entire Rotary Club, their wives and families, to his Mingo Creek farm on Federal Drive. It was called Avery's Corner at that time. You'll recognize it in a minute. He invited them all over for a chicken dinner. The photograph on the screen shows his Texaco filling station at the convergence of Mingo Creek and Federal Drive, Route 66, at what today is the traffic circle at South Mingo Road and East Admiral Place. I bet almost all of you have driven by that particular monument. That building, the Texaco station we saw a moment ago, also housed a tavern, as you might expect if Rotarians are involved, called Ye Old English Inn, whose sign advertised its famous Cy recipe chicken dinners. Members were asked on the day of that picnic to leave town around 2 in the afternoon because it took a little while to get out all the way to Mingo out there on Admiral. Dinner would be served at 5:30 promptly. Each family was instructed to bring their own tools, their plates, knives, and forks, but the chicken was on Cy. That particular dinner was part of the annual Rotary picnic. We've talked about Rotary picnics before with our DNA, and that year it was described as offering continuous action of amusement and merriment. Jenny, is that something the paper would write about maybe? Probably. There were wheelbarrow races, milk drinking contests with highly creative interpretations of the rules, balloon blowing competitions between Rotarians and Rotarians. Maybe we need to do that for the next Golden Circle Gala, Sheree, I don't know. There was a sideshow benefiting the Red Cross. There was a horseshoe contest, and the prize was a hand-painted plate that somehow disappeared underneath the chicken table. And then Cy's battle cry went out. The chicken is done! What followed was described simply as a riot. From that moment on, it was every person for themselves, but true to form, Cy had more than enough chicken for everybody. The photo shown on the screen appeared in the Tulsa Gasser the following week. On October 6, 1928, the caption read, "This hick band out at Cy's farm played melodies in more keys than Paderewski ever heard of. Behind their disguise, you may be able to recognize members of the Oklahoma Natural Gas Band." Years later, Route 66 was officially retired, 1985, but its legacy and Cy's legacy live on. Tulsa honors Cy Avery with Avery Drive and with the Cyrus Avery Centennial Plaza, where the bronze sculpture East Meets West depicts him halting his automobile to allow a wagon team of horses to pass. But long before that sculpture was conceived, long before the highway, Cy Avery was a Rotarian. He was a servant leader. He was a civic visionary, a generous host. He was our Cy. He was one of the guys also responsible for the Spavinaw Waterway. And I would contend, based on what I've learned over the years, without the Spavinaw Waterway, I don't think our city would have been as successful as it has been and will continue to be. That supply of water will carry us forward for yet generations. So what does this story tell us? Well, Rotary leadership doesn't begin with titles. It begins with service. It begins with some vision and with a sense of community, with gathering 90 friends around a campfire for chicken and possum, or inviting the whole club over for a riotous dinner. More than 100 years later, the spirit of Cy Avery, service, fellowship, and bold vision still lives in our Rotary DNA. Before I forget, Karen Keith brought this to me and made me promise to talk about it for a second. Do you remember a few moments ago, Alan Whalen introduced Kevin Murray's wife, very attractive lady up here that's responsible for grooming Kevin. She has written, this book is literally hot off the presses. She's written this book, it's a children's book, Meet Cyrus Avery, father of Route 66. She brought a copy with her. She's not got this, can someone buy this today? No, can't buy this copy, but she can help you get a copy if you need it. Now, I get to introduce another fabulous Rotarian of the day. Richard Holmes is a lifelong Oklahoman. He's married to Lina, who's sitting up front here. Lina, thank you for coming with him today. His daughter, Ashley, is a third-generation Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Tulsa. Richard's a graduate of the University of Oklahoma. Ed, did you know that? And he entered the University of Tulsa College of Law in 1972. Richard practices with the Tulsa law firm of Hanson and Holmes, where he specializes in trusts, estates, business matters, and alliteration. He is a past chairman of the American Diabetes Association Tulsa Board of Directors and led the Concourse for the Cure automobile fundraiser at Southern Hills for many years. Richard became a Rotarian in 1990. In 2003, he chaired the International Projects Committee that launched our club's water well program in Nicaragua. Most of you remember that program, which was so very successful. You've got Richard to thank for that in some degree. He's previously served on the Rotary Club of Tulsa Board of Directors and as an International Service Director. He's also the founder and president of the Heart of Route 66 Auto Museum, a nonprofit organization that, oh, yeah, that's. It opened in August of 2016 at the historic Armory 1 mile west of downtown Sapulpa at Dewey and Sahoma Lake Road. Please welcome our Rotarian of the Day, Richard Holmes.
Thank you, Carl, and I'm happy to have Reese Martin here today. He's an author and a photographer from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he had his love for traveling awakened in 2009. At that point, he sold all his possessions, left the country, and he spent 10 months living out of a backpack traveling Southeast Asia and Europe. When he returned home, it was at that point he had fresh eyes for his home state, and he drove the back roads of Oklahoma. Reese discovered significance of historic Route 66 and the greater American story that we have. He's traveled all of the 2,448 miles of Route 66, the Mother Road, and he continues to seek out main streets in the Midwest. The quiet places. Reese is now a travel writer and a photographer, and he's been featured in a number of publications, including Tulsa People magazine, This Land Press, Route 66 magazine, Nimrod Journal, The Oklahoman, The Tulsa World, and he's also wrote a book, Lost Restaurants of Tulsa, which features stories of nearly 50 iconic eating establishments in the city's past. Reese works for the National Trust for Historic Preservation as their National Preserve Route 66 manager. He served as president of the Oklahoma Route 66 Association since 2019, and he sits on multiple boards and commissions related to the Mother Road and its centennial this year. He loves to connect with people and share his experiences. And fun fact is that when we offered at the museum Packard rides in a 1924 Packard touring car owned by our Rotarian Robert Parker, Reese was one of the first people that showed up, and he had his 1920s vest and hat. And he's an enthusiast of Route 66 in every way. And let's welcome Reese Martin.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you all so much for having me. It is a tremendous honor to stand here at the same figurative podium that Cyrus Avery stood at. I have such a tremendous respect for him and his family and his legacy. You know, we're all in the Route 66 community today because of his hard work. Just a brief note of bookkeeping right up front. So there are some editions of the Sentinel magazine on some of the tables around the room. That is a gift from Mr. Michael Wallace and Mr. Ken Busby of the Route 66 Alliance. That is a new periodical that they're working with the former newspaper in Galena, Kansas, which is part of that state's 13.2 miles of Route 66, helping kind of get more of the stories of Route 66 out to a wider audience. And that's the very first edition that just came out in January, so please enjoy that. And it was mentioned about Cyrus Avery's contributions to Tulsa and the Spavinaw pipeline. It really cannot be stressed enough how important that was to Tulsa's development and its success in those years. They used to have a phrase that if you happened to go take a bath in the Arkansas River at the time, first you'd have to dry off, then you'd have to dust off. There are some incredible pictures at the Tulsa Historical Society and to the wonderfully preserved Beryl Ford collection, which you all were responsible for, that show some amazing bottled water trucks in downtown Tulsa, because that's how you had to get your drinking water back then, is buy it off the back of a truck. But here we are, and so I'm here to talk to you about Route 66. And chances are, if you're in this room, you kind of know the general story of how U.S. Highway 66 evolved from a standard federal highway to one of many into a legendary roadway of hopes, dreams, and eventually nostalgia. So I'm not going to give you a general history today, but we can't know where we're going unless we know where we've been. So I'm going to touch on it a little bit. And I think there are a few points to mention as we work through the decades between inception, decertification, and revitalization. We think of the interstate highway system in the 1950s as the era of shifting priorities for American travelers, the destination as opposed to the journey. But did you know that in the 1920s, in those early days of the national highway system discussion, even then there were differing opinions about the role of such a network of roads? Do these highways increase the ease of travel and bypass towns, or do they connect communities along the way? Sounds very familiar if you've watched Pixar's Cars. Cyrus Avery, the father of Route 66, who you've learned a bit about today, and a name that you all know, was an advocate for it being a road of connection. He was one of 21 men appointed to that National Interstate Highway Board, and he saw Highway 66 as having the potential to be the strongest commercial corridor in the country. Combining with the burgeoning tourism industry, he knew that it would be good for each and every town the road passed through. So not only do we have Avery to thank for the highway's general path west, but the way it weaved across the land. Add in the founding of the U.S. Highway 66 Association and the adoption of the road's first nickname, the Main Street of America, and you have a recipe for economic development and civic pride. In a 1932 speech in Rolla, Missouri, Avery said it like this: U.S. 66 has an advantage over any other highway leading from east of the Mississippi to the Pacific coast, in that it crosses, between Chicago and St. Louis, every important interstate highway originating in what is known as the original 13 states, and constituting one of the most thickly populated sections of the United States. Continuing, it is almost a direct route from St. Louis to Springfield, Joplin, Oklahoma City, and on west to Holbrook, Arizona, where it intersects or crosses every important highway leading from the Atlantic to the Pacific, except US 10 and US 80, and every major interstate highway included in this master system of highways. You know, these days, Route 66 has become such an icon unto itself, we forget that it was a spine that connected so many other highways that were just as important to the towns that they went through. Once the interstates did come, though, there were a few ways to react. One was resistance, one was ambivalence, and one was adaptation. Jack Cupbirth, treasurer of the U.S. 66 Highway Association and its only paid employee from 1948 until his death 30 years later, was the voice for Route 66 as this new network took shape. He was a barber from Clinton and just saw something that he could serve and a purpose that he could fulfill. Jack and the association chose adaptation. They could not stop the interstate, but they could try to work with it, at least as much as possible. Much like the old highway itself went with the land. They lobbied for formal interstate business loop signage and inclusion on government maps, which was partially successful. Of course, as we all know, the interstates doomed old Highway 66. It took 5 of them to replace her. And at the very end, that national association even tried to embrace this new world to keep the road relevant. This is one of the last pamphlets that the organization produced to their members, and you can see you've got all these interstate signs and a little US Highway 66 shield down there letting folks know it was still something that was out there. After Jack passed away in 1977, that was it. The organization formally closed its doors the next year, and less than a decade later, US 66 was literally removed off the maps. Of course, as we all know, that's the Interstate's doomed 66. Oh, I said that already. As we also know, that was not the end of the story. And depending on the audience, this reference sometimes gets lost. But if you're a fan of Star Wars, you know that moment where Obi-Wan Kenobi says, "If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." By 1989, all 8 states that Route 66 ran through had their own association at a state level dedicated to preserving and promoting the road. In June of 1990, War Acres in Oklahoma was the site of the very first brown historic Route 66 sign that would eventually stretch from Chicago to Santa Monica. This is a picture donated to the association by the family of Joe Brown, and that sign is going up on the left there, right by the old Dairy Queen at 11th and Yale. I think the sign is still there, but nothing else currently exists. Books by Quinta Scott and Susan Croce Kelly, and then Michael Wallace's book, Route 66, The Mother Road, in 1990, ignited a movement that is still growing today. Now, if we could go back in time and pluck someone from Arcadia, Oklahoma, in the late 1980s, when the barn looked actually quite a bit worse than this, and tell them that their old dilapidated barn on the side of the highway would be wonderfully restored by a group of dedicated volunteers, and that this barn would become one of the most visited and photographed attractions on Route 66, they would probably send you in to get your head examined. But it's one side of many in a landscape full of passion projects, of unique people, of crazy ideas that make the road what it is today. It's more than a living museum. It's an evolving ribbon of storytelling and common purpose. Over the last 3 decades, multiple national-level organizations and agencies have stepped forward to provide resources to help study the highway and aid in its continuing legacy. The National Park Service was first out of the gate, directed by Congress to study the road and recommend commemoration and preservation activities in 1990, the same year Michael Wallace's book came out. And it would be remiss to talk about the road's evolution without quoting my friend Kaisa Barthuli's favorite passage in the legislation that passed in 1999 that created the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program. And I'm going to read it verbatim. The Secretary of the Interior shall provide assistance in the preservation of the Route 66 corridor in a manner that is compatible with the idiosyncratic nature of the Route 66 corridor. And all of us in the preservation community are fairly certain this is the only national congressional bill that has the word idiosyncratic in it. This program not only provided grants and technical assistance, but it showed people that it was possible to bring life back to communities that had been decimated by the bypass. It showed people their stories were important beyond their own town limits, and that the road still had stories to tell. That 10-year program was so successful that it was officially extended for an additional decade. Many people don't know this, but legislation also called for a permanent private nonprofit to be established to carry on the mission once that corridor preservation program was gone. And in 2013, a strategic roundtable spearheaded by the World Monuments Fund came together in Anaheim, California to chart the future of Route 66 as a linear community. Using an economic impact study from Rutgers University, the first of its kind, more than 100 people from across the road talked about collaboration, preservation, tourism. There were panel discussions, presentations, mixers, and even a tour of the brand new Cars Land at Disneyland. In short, it was a talk about the future. One of the results of that conference was the formation of another group that I am proud to serve on the board of, the Route 66 Road Ahead Partnership, which turns 10 years old this year. This photo is from February of 2017, about 6 months after that nonprofit was established. This group has worked constantly behind the scenes, working to set up a framework for ongoing support of the highway. Some things have been successful, some things have not, but the people that make up the board have always worked with their national hat on. When I joined that organization in 2019, it was clear that these people were passionate advocates for the success of Route 66's evolving story, not just in the field of preservation, but in education, promotion, revitalization, and collaboration. Here's a more recent picture of my friends from the 8 states that make up that organization. As you can see, we all have the same hat on as a nice symbol that when you're here, you think with your national hat on. Not your state, not your city, but what's good for the road as a whole, which, funny enough, tends to filter down and is what's good for the community anyway. Many of the projects that the Road Ahead has worked on were folded into the overall national centennial efforts. A consistent national communications plan, which included like a website and an event calendar, something that you think would be relatively easy. But any of you have even tried to put together that kind of information on a citywide level, know that once you connect 2,448 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica, you have a lot of people trying to do the same thing at the same time, and it gets a little more complicated. They've offered preservation and economic development grants, toolkits to help people understand how to preserve these sites. A lot of these historic properties come into the ownership of somebody that Route 66 appeals to them because it's an idea, because they see themselves as being, part of this greater family. They don't know how to handle historic brick and mortar buildings. They don't know what the history of their property is, and they need help kind of getting caught up to understand that, Route 66 is more than a vibe. It very much is an idea, but there's actual preservation that needs to take place too. A national kickoff celebration will be taking place on April 30th in Springfield, Missouri. They call themselves the birthplace of Route 66 because that's where the road got its iconic number. It was alluded to earlier that originally it was going to be Highway 60. And there's a whole story I could sit up here and talk to you for an hour about. But basically, Kentucky threw a fit. They didn't have one of these new highways, and they had to come up with another number, and 66 was available. That happened in Springfield, so they call themselves the birthplace. That's fine. Tulsa's the capital of Route 66. They can have birthplace. Not to mention guidance and support for numerous outside agencies to tie Route 66 and what they were doing. Route 66 has recently been designated a National Civil Engineering Landmark because of the tremendous work it took to pave the highway and literally create a new way to travel across this country. Work is continuing to get Route 66 designated as a National Historic Trail. That legislation has been introduced every session since 2018. It has been reintroduced for the current session. Both in the House and in the Senate federally. We're hoping that it'll get through this year. Stay tuned to the Oklahoma Route 66 Association and other channels on how you might be able to write a letter or show your support to members of Congress that this is the year to make that happen. They've also been strongly advocating for a Route 66 stamp in 2026, which if you haven't heard, I'm really happy to announce that the U.S. Postal Service will be releasing a special series of 8 stamps this year, one for every state. Oklahoma's stamp is going to be the Oil Capital Motel sign right next to the Arkansas River right here in Tulsa. And it was, when those signs went up, I was on the group that helped select those 3 signs, and they have a really great story about why those 3 signs were rebuilt right next to the river and everything. But it fell to me to call the family of the owners of the Oil Capital Motel back when it opened in the late 1950s to tell them, their family's legacy was going to be on a stamp. And not to be dismissed, the Road Ahead provides the opportunity for statewide organizations to connect regularly, share updates, seek inputs from their compatriots along the road. Again, communication is such a strength, but sometimes it's hard to get there. That kind of connection makes us all stronger. And we've got a few projects we're working on for the centennial, which I'll mention as we continue here. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, another one of the hats that I wear, has also been engaged with Route 66 for a few years. The road was designated as one of the 11 most endangered places some years back, really communicating its importance to the national story. A decade later, we hit the road in a customized Airstream trailer. There's a wonderful picture of it here in El Reno. When they came through Tulsa, they stopped in the Kendall-Whittier district, right across from the Circle Cinema, which is part of the road's original alignment, to gather support for that original incarnation of that national trail bill. Through that road trip, the Trust received a sizable donation for Route 66 preservation. Someone in California who we weren't connected with passed away, and we just got a call from their lawyer one day saying they left their entire estate to the National Trust as long as you use it to preserve Route 66. How incredible is that? It was over $5 million. And that's gone into a grant program, that's gone into mapping work for research, and that's what eventually led them to hire me, not at that rate, obviously, to travel the road and help connect all of these 8 states together for this tremendous year. There are still so many people out there that think Route 66 is just a road, and they don't fully grasp its appeal or its cultural importance. So that brings us to today. So much passion and hard work has been building towards this moment, the 100th birthday of Route 66. People of all kinds are wanting to get involved in some form or fashion, and a lot of them are actually still trying to figure out what they want to do, if you can believe it. I try not to judge them for coming to the table late and just celebrate the fact that they're here at all. The energy is invaluable. It's answering the question that I still get more often than any other is, does Route 66 still exist? And I get to tell them the good news that, yes, it does still exist. And this entire community has this year to make sure that everybody knows that answer. Not only is it still here, but there's a lot of activity to mark the occasion, and I've lost count of how many groundbreakings I've been invited to in the last 18 months. I expect a lot of these new national parties and these folks that are interested will probably find something new in 2027 or 2028, something to put their energy behind. But what's happening, especially in the state of Oklahoma and in the city of Tulsa, is the envy of the other 7 states and countless communities. They'll call and say, what is in the water in Tulsa? Which gives me the chance to talk about Cyrus Avery again. But talk about the programs that we have, our Neon Grant program, our Facade Grant program that helps with historic preservation, the fact that the city established, their planning office put together a master plan, which is very geeky, but it's a way for the planning office to say, this is what we're going to do for this highway. Because when I first walked down Route 66 in Tulsa to explore it, this was back in like the late 2000s, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess. This is Route 66. If you watched that evolution over the last 10 to 15 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Irish writer and poet George Augustus Moore said, "A man travels the world over in search of what he needs and returns home to find it." Route 66 is very much the same. The future of the road has to be what made it special in the first place: connection. It's already what brings people to the Mother Road from all over the planet, a chance to experience America in an authentic way. It's not a curated experience. It's not a singular landmark that's seen in the history books. It's something unexpected and real. It's something that connects us even if we don't speak the same language. It's big cities and small towns, lush farmland and scenic vistas. It's diner favorites and cultural diversity, and it's a little bit of everything in a package that looks a little different to every traveler. Route 66 is a connector to our past. Places like the Osterman Filling Station here in Peach Springs, Arizona, bring to life a story that had been almost forgotten. Travelers would pass through this community not understanding that it was also the home of the Wallapai Nation. The station had a caved-in roof and a collapsed wall and just a shred of hope. But it was an important part of the community story, and with the help of the National Trust and others today, it stands as a monument to that hope. It is possible, and now the tribe has the opportunity to share their story and their unique history with people from around the world. And it can also be a place where the elders can share their life experience with the next generation and provide them with a reminder that it's okay to slow down. Route 66 is a connector of communities. Tourism is an us or them game, usually. Come here and experience what we have to offer, but don't go over there. But with Route 66, the journey is the destination. What Joliet does is good for Braidwood. What Joplin does is good for Miami. What Seligman, Arizona does is good for Kingman. Folks on the road experience it all, and the more we can do to keep people on the road, the better it is for everyone. Working together to promote one another, increasing the time travelers spend in communities means more tax dollars for local businesses. That's where police and fire get paid for. More opportunities for people to share their stories with passersby and for others to come along and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. And that leads me to the most important thing about the road, is that it is a connector of people. And for it to survive for another 100 years, it must continue to be. And I'll give you a great example of the kind of connection I'm talking about. Back in 2018, I stopped at a little place outside of Veneta called the Highway Cafe. Has anybody ever been to that little restaurant on Route 66? Great little place. They've built a couple of giants there, like you can't miss it now. They've done a really great job. But I was still pretty early in my Route 66 journey at the time. And so I walked in. They have a little counter, which if there's a lunch counter in a restaurant, that's exactly where I'm sitting. And an older gentleman walked in behind me, took the seat next to me. And I just turned to him and said, hi, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm fine. He said, I saw you taking some pictures outside the building when you came in. They'd put some murals up on the side of the building, and they had a neon sign. It had not yet been restored, but had its own charm. And I said, yeah, I sure was. It's really nice. And he said, yeah, this place has a lot of really great stuff to take pictures of. And we got to chatting for a couple of minutes. I asked him, are you from here? And he said, well, yes, I've lived here my whole life. I remember when Route 66 was the only highway out here. It was just 2 lanes, and my great uncle came to Veneta on the train. I'm 72 now, so this is a long time ago, and it used to flood so bad around here, we'd have to get around on my dad's old International Harvester. Do you know what that is? Well, it was the only vehicle that could get to town when the roads were that bad. We ordered some food and continued talking. He said, well, I had family I used to visit in Tulsa from time to time. I remember we'd be getting close to town, and we'd pass these 3 giant radio towers. And I tell him I know exactly where that is. That's out on Route 66 also. Right today, what's the edge of town? But back then it was a little further out of town. I smiled. He smiled. He mentioned Bob Wills and going to a barn there locally to listen to him play, or his family, I should say. I asked, is that barn still there? Can I go take a picture of it? He said, well, no, it burned down a couple of years ago. But that's the way of the world. Our conversation dwindled once the food arrived, and Leonard noticed a few guys next to him that he knew, and so he kind of rotated his chair around and started admonishing them for letting their grass grow too tall. I finished my meal and thanked Leonard for the enlightening conversation. I went over to the cash register, and the waitress said, how is everything? She said, is this together? And I said, well, yes, it is, because that's what you do for your friends. Leonard passed away in 2023, and when he died, so many people spoke up on Facebook and in person and had so many stories like mine. Just a complete stranger that just sat down and treated you immediately like a friend. And Route 66 is full of these people. I encourage people to lean into those conversations, talk to other travelers, listen to their stories. They're going to want to know your story too. And I stand here today to tell you it's not just a chance meeting with an outside personality. You can walk into a place and just feel that connection if it's done right. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. And there are setbacks and disappointments. But if your heart's in the right place and the stars align just right, you'll find a family out there on the 2-lane highway. That's why people still talk about Bob Waldmeyer of Illinois, Gary Turner of Missouri, or Laurel Kane, who had a Packard Museum up in Afton, Oklahoma. That's how people like Angel Delgadillo in Arizona or Michael Wallace right here in Tulsa continue to inspire people. It's what led people like Michael Jones in Sapulpa or Sebastian de Border to move here from the Netherlands to buy an old motel, fix it up, and serve people. Most people want to feel like they're a part of something greater than themselves. This remarkable highway provides that kind of common ground. There's a phrase of Michael Wallace's that I bring out when the time is right, is that Route 66 is 2 blue states with a bunch of red states in the middle, which means the road itself is purple. In this divided time, it's great to have something that usually overrides that division. Route 66 is more than a road. It's a symbol. No matter who you are in this country or outside of it, you can find your reflection somewhere on it. The problem with predicting the future is that it's always changing. There are forces outside of our control that can rock the foundations of even our most dedicated efforts. But if you take away only one thing from the presentation today, let it be this. Route 66 has always been a road of the future. It has evolved time and time again and come back from the edge of complete irrelevance. But it has survived, and it continues to appeal to an international audience across generations. It doesn't mean the same thing to the children of today as it did to their grandparents. And yet, Route 66 has always represented freedom, as cliche as that is. It has always been the open road and the doorstep to possibility. Every child that lights up when he sees cars for the first time, or every couple that decides to take a road trip on their honeymoon, every social media follower that decides they have to see that big concrete blue whale for themselves, every worn-down workaholic that takes the off-ramp and discovers a world they thought had been lost forever, they are all the next generation. Route 66 has been here for a long time, and as long as it stays authentic to the American landscape that it connects across more than 2,400 miles, it will be here for a long time to come. I have just a few minutes, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you all have any. Oh, back here, then you, Karen. Of course.
Could you share some information about the Route 66 parade?
Yes, so May 30th is the date that the city of Tulsa has planted a flag in and said we are going to set a Guinness World Record for the most classic cars through an intersection in a day. So the night before, all these cars, they're going to try to get 3,000 of them here in town to gather at the fairgrounds. And then The morning of the 30th, they're going to go up Yale to 11th and Yale, turn left, and come all the way down 11th Street to the traffic circle right over here in front of the old Warehouse Market building. Closing off any more of the road would be super expensive because then you got to impact the interstate, and we don't want to do that. So that day, the whole city is encouraged to activate their area. Our office is right next to the Campbell Hotel. We're going to be set up to cheer the drivers as they go on, but it's going to be a really big deal. Those of you that know classic car people know they usually don't like to commit to car shows or parades more than a week out because of the weather. They have more than 1,000 cars already registered for this event. People are coming from more than 20 states already to participate in this. It's going to be incredible. Karen.
That was going to be my question. Tell us some of the other activities that are planned.
So that same day, Oklahoma City's going to have a concert at Scissortail Park. So if people want to take a road trip after they're done, because that parade's going to be in the morning. If they want to hit the road, they can take 66 between Tulsa and Oklahoma City and go see a concert down there. I'm working on a national caravan in the month of June that's going to go from Santa Monica to Chicago. We'll be coming through here on the 18th of June. That's going to have people from all 8 states. Anybody know what the Big Texan is, that steakhouse in Amarillo that challenges you to eat a 72-ounce steak in an hour to get it for free? No, thank you. They're going to join us. They're going to do one of those steak challenges every night, including here in Tulsa on the 18th. They're bringing a big fiberglass cow on a trailer to advertise that too. But there are literally dozens of things planned right now for the centennial. I really encourage you, if you're interested, go to oklahomaroute66.com. We have an event calendar there. I was just in Weatherford yesterday talking to the Stafford Air and Space Museum about a big band hangar dance we're going to have there in April with some vintage aircraft and a lot of things. So it's really, really fun. Other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that question. So right after I got home from my international travels, like within a year, my dad passed away unexpectedly. And as you can imagine, that like changed my perspective on everything. And he had a 2005 Mustang, a V6, that new retro body style at the time. He had one payment left on that car. So I paid it off and I just looked at it. I was like, do I put this in the garage and do I polish it and everything, or do I drive it? I thought, well, this is the only way I can spend time with him now, so I'm going to drive it. I am proud to say that it just rolled over 240,000 miles. It's in the parking lot right out there right now. And it's done all of Route 66, many parts of it multiple times, and that is my faithful road warrior. Maybe one more question? So, good question. It's really tough to measure, and then part of it is that goes back to that word idiosyncratic. Every trip is different. There's nowhere you can sit there and click. You know, in a lot of these places, the only metric you can get is a spiral-bound notebook in the gift shop. But we estimate in a typical year, more than 100,000 people travel Route 66 from other countries specifically to travel Route 66. This year, we hope that will at least double. I've got some friends right now over in France at a big travel show, and a lot of people are asking about it. They are getting some questions about safety of coming into the country, and a lot of the news they're getting isn't super positive, but all of the Route 66 communities are talking about the road is amazing, fly into Chicago, rent a car, come out here, we'd love to have you. So I've already seen dozens and dozens of people that have been traveling the road from other countries this year, and that's just going to increase.
Thank you, Reese. Well done. Reese was a world traveler for a while. Reese, I understand you spent quite a bit of time on a barge or barges, and thinking we may have to twist your arm, get you to come back and tell a little bit of that story.
Happy to.
Okay. Karen McCannell's not here today, but you might jot that down, Curtis, for her. Willem, are you thinking about staying in Tulsa and buying a hotel when you're done with your education, buddy? No? Okay. All right. Mr. Boggs, if you would, please, a side mic announcement. This is Harold Boggs, the Actar Shrine Circus, who's going to chat with us for just a minute. You got any of those shirts for sale, Harold?
Yeah, I can get you one. Hi, I'm Harold Boggs. I'm with Actar Shrine. I'm actually the setting potentate this year for 26, which is in standard president over the directors, or the board of directors. I'm here to advertise for our circus. We got 9 shows coming February 26th through March 1st. This is our 81st annual circus. We're the longest going act at the Tulsa Fairgrounds. 81 years we've been out there. We've actually been out there longer than the fair has, thanks to COVID. They got shut down, we didn't. So that's how we surpassed them. But other than that, like I said, this is our 81st. You know, we're here to raise money for the children. We've got 22 hospitals nationwide. We've actually went overseas now. We are starting to expand. Tulsa, we're hurting for people, but that's beside the point. I think all these little, you know, like Rotary Club, everything's gotten smaller. So, but other than that, I'd love to see y'all come out. Like I said, we got 9 shows. Thursday, we got 6:30. February 27th on Friday, we got a 4 and a 7:30. And then Saturday and Sunday, we got a 10:30, 2:30, and a 6:30 show. So come out. All kids 12 and under are free. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. We've got a book today that Jenny Hammett picked out. Another perfect title, I think. This week's book is Sammy's Route 66 Adventure. Reese has already inscribed that for us. We've got some excellent upcoming programs. Next week, Devin Laney with The Gradient will be speaking to us. They've got some dynamic things going on there that we need to know about. March 4th is Business Visitation Day. How many of you have signed up for business visitation? Ben Gorell's the only one that's raised his hand so far. Come on now. All right, please get signed up for that. And then March 11th, we've got a really interesting program. Mike Neal, of our member, Mike Neal, Tulsa Chamber of Commerce, Bill Knight, who I believe is the outgoing president of the chamber, and Dr. Cliff Robertson of the St. Francis Health System will be here to do a little bit of a roundtable. And what do you want to bet? They're going to have good news for us about Tulsa. If nothing else, they can remind us we're not Minnesota. Fireside meetings are being held this week. There's a registration link in your Monday message for fireside meetings. Committee meetings today, 1 committee meeting, club and vocational committee. Well, who's chairing that committee? There we go, Julie Rettinger in room 231. Want to thank again our Rotary sponsors. Their placards are on your table, along with the conversation starters. Then the little tents on your table, they're actually some of the fireside questions. You might be thinking about those. But our sponsors' names are on those placards. Please consider doing business with your fellow Rotarians first. We appreciate our sponsors and their contributions. As you leave today, please stop and say hi to our new member, Jenny Graham, and welcome back to Johan Tallman. They'll be at the guest table in the foyer. In closing, as we leave today and we head back to our busy schedules, I encourage each of you to make time this year to experience Route 66. Whether it's a short day trip or a longer journey across state lines, there's something special about traveling a highway that tells the story of America and of our own community's place in that history. Nothing else, go see Mr. Holmes' museum there in Sapulpa. It's fantastic. Reese, thank you again. With that, we stand adjourned.
Jack, take my way. It's the highway, that's the best. Get your kicks on Route 66. Well, it winds from Chicago to LA. More than 2,000 miles all the way. Get your kicks on Route 66. Well, it goes from St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, Oklahoma City looks so pretty, you see. Get your kicks on Route 66. Get your kicks on Route 66. Get your kicks on Route 66. Life could be a dream.